The Nexus Station border market reeked of desperation and burnt engine oil. Commander Thane Reeves pulled his weathered jacket tighter as he navigated through the maze of makeshift stalls, each one hawking salvaged tech, expired rations, and other detritus from the galaxy's forgotten corners. He'd only stopped here to refuel and resupply after 6 months in the Outer Rim, but the familiar chaos of a border market always drew him in. Next lot. The auctioneer's voice crackled through ancient speakers, cutting through the ambient noise of haggling merchants and humming machinery. Salvage from the Kepler disaster site. 1 bio-unit, low maintenance, basic labor capable. Thane paused, his scarred hands gripping a toolkit he'd been examining. Bio-unit meant slave, a practice that existed in the legal gray zones of border space, where imperial law held little sway. He'd seen enough of the galaxy's cruelties to know better than to look, but something made him turn toward the auction platform anyway. They dragged her up the metal steps like a broken piece of machinery. She was small, probably barely reaching his shoulder, with pale blue-gray skin that seemed almost translucent under the harsh market lights. Her species was unfamiliar to him, humanoid but distinctly alien, with delicate features and dark hair that hung in matted strands around her face. The simple gray jumpsuit she wore hung loose on her thin frame, and her bare feet were cut and dirty. "Look at this one." The auctioneer, a fat Turanian with gold-capped teeth, grabbed her chin and forced her head up. She flinched but didn't cry out. Quiet, obedient, perfect for household work or light industrial tasks. Bidding starts at 2 credits. The crowd, a mix of smugglers, merchants, and worse, laughed and jeered. Thane found himself moving closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. 2 credits for that bag of bones? A scarred woman in pilot's leathers shook her head. "She looks half dead already." "Can't even look you in the eye," another voice called out. "Probably brain damaged from whatever hellhole you pulled her from." But Thane was looking at her hands. Despite the grime and the obvious malnutrition, he could see the calluses, specific patterns he recognized from his own years working with ship systems, engineers' hands, and the way she held herself even in obvious terror spoke of training, military training. "Do I hear 2 credits? The auctioneer's voice grew more desperate. 1 credit? Come on, she's housebroken and everything." More laughter. Someone threw a piece of fruit that splattered near her feet. She didn't even flinch. That's when their eyes met. For just a moment she looked directly at him, and Thane saw it. A flicker of something that wasn't broken at all. Intelligence. Defiance. A spark that refused to be extinguished despite whatever horrors had brought her here. "Fine, fine." The auctioneer waved his hands in disgust. "Starting bid is now 5 credits. 5 credits for this perfectly serviceable. I'll take her." The words came out before Thane realized he'd spoken. The crowd turned to stare at him. As he stepped forward, his boots ringing against the metal deck plating. "You want to bid 5 credits?" The auctioneer looked genuinely surprised. "I'll pay 50. The laughter died. The entire market seemed to hold its breath. Even the girl's eyes widened slightly, though she quickly looked away again. 50 credits? The Turanian's gold teeth glinted. "Well, that's very generous. Commander? Reeves." Thane pulled out his credit chip, his movements steady despite the attention. 50 credits, as stated. Sold. The auctioneer's gavel came down with unusual enthusiasm. Lot 17 goes to Commander Reeves for 50 credits. The crowd began to disperse, muttering among themselves about crazy humans and their soft hearts. Thane ignored them, walking up to the platform where the girl stood frozen, her chains already unlocked by an eager attendant. "Come on," he said quietly, his voice gentle despite its natural roughness. "Let's get out of here." She followed him without a word, her bare feet silent on the deck. It wasn't until they were halfway back to his ship that she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" Thane paused, considering his answer. Around them, the market continued its chaotic dance of commerce and desperation, but for a moment, it felt like they were the only 2 people in the galaxy. "Because I know what it's like," he said finally, "to be thrown away by people who should have known better. And I know that sometimes the things others call worthless are the most valuable of all." She said nothing more, but he thought he saw her shoulders straighten just a little as they walked toward whatever came next. The Starfall wasn't much to look at, a modified Corsair-class transport that had seen better decades, but it was home. Thane led the girl through the cramped corridors to the small passenger quarters, acutely aware of her silent presence behind him. She moved like a ghost, her footsteps barely audible on the deck plating. "This is yours," he said, opening the door to reveal a simple but clean room with a narrow bunk, storage locker, and personal hygiene station. Lock works from the inside. No one enters without your permission. She stood in the doorway, staring at the room as if it might be a trap. Her dark eyes darted from the bed to the lock mechanism, then back to him with barely concealed suspicion. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Kira," she whispered, then immediately looked like she regretted speaking. "Kira." He nodded. "I'm Thane. The ship's systems will respond to your voice once I program them." "Are you hungry?" She shook her head. Quickly, but her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly. A flush of deeper blue crept across her cheeks. "I'll leave some food outside your door," he said, pretending not to notice her embarrassment. "Rest as long as you need. We'll be in hyperspace for 3 days." For the first day, she didn't emerge at all. Thane left meals outside her door, simple but nutritious fare, and noticed they disappeared eventually. He tried not to think about what she'd endured before the auction, but his imagination filled in the gaps anyway. The flinch when the auctioneer grabbed her, the way she'd expected the thrown fruit, the careful way she moved as if anticipating violence. On the second day, alarms began shrieking through the ship. "Damn it," Thane muttered, racing to the bridge as warning lights bathed the corridor in red. His navigation computer was displaying a cascade of errors, and the hyperspace tunnel around them flickered ominously. Navigation array failure. His ship's AI announced in its maddeningly calm voice. "Recommend immediate drop to real space. If we drop here, we'll be in the middle of nothing." Thane growled, his hands flying over the controls. "Come on, baby, stay with me." The hyperdrive sputtered and died. The Starfall tumbled back into normal space in a shower of sparks from overloaded systems. Thane managed to stabilize their drift, but the damage was extensive. They were stranded in deep space, hours from the nearest inhabited system. Assessment. Navigation computer requires complete circuit board replacement, the AI reported. Estimated repair time with available resources, 47 hours. Thane slumped in his pilot's chair, running a hand through his graying hair. He'd been putting off that repair for months, and now it had finally caught up with him. The replacement. Parts were in his cargo hold, but the delicate work of installing them would take... "May I see?" He spun around to find Kira standing in the bridge doorway, no longer cowering but studying the damaged console with professional interest. "The navigation array," she clarified, stepping closer. "I heard the alarms." "It's pretty badly damaged," Thane said carefully. "The main processing unit is fried, and half the circuit boards need to be replaced." "I know." She moved to the console, her fingers hovering over the open panels. "Valdrian Class C hyperspace computer, military grade. They use the same model on our..." She stopped abruptly, but her hands were already moving, probing connections with practiced precision. "You're an engineer," Thane said. It wasn't a question. Was. Her voice was barely audible. Before, she worked in silence for nearly an hour while Thane watched, fascinated. Her movements were swift and sure, and he could see the intelligence behind her dark eyes as she diagnosed problems and traced circuit pathways. This wasn't basic technical knowledge. This was expertise. "The quantum stabilizer is misaligned," she said finally. "That's why the cascade failure spread so quickly. If you have replacement boards, I can fix it, but..." She hesitated, glancing at him uncertainly. "But?" "The work is very delicate. One mistake could destroy the entire system. You might not want to trust..." "I trust you," Thane said firmly. "What do you need?" Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe even the beginning of gratitude. "The replacement parts and..." "Could you assist?" "I'll need someone to hold the quantum matrix steady while I realign the core." They worked together for the next 6 hours, her quiet instructions guiding his hands as they carefully rebuilt the navigation computer. She spoke more in those hours than she had since he'd bought her freedom, her voice growing stronger as she lost herself in the familiar work. "There," she said finally, closing the last panel. "Try it now." The console hummed to life, displaying perfect readings across all systems. Thane stared at the screens in amazement. The computer was running better than it had in years. "Kira," he said softly, "what happened to your world?" Her shoulders tensed, but she didn't run. "Valdris Prime. The war came suddenly. Our defenses failed and the orbital bombardment began. I was in the deep maintenance shafts when the command center was hit. By the time I reached the surface..." She took a shaky breath. "There was nothing left. The rescue ships found me 3 days later, but I was the only survivor." "I'm sorry," Thane said, and meant it. He'd seen worlds die, had lost enough people to understand the weight of being the last one left. "They said I was lucky," she continued, her voice growing bitter. "Lucky to be alive. Lucky to be found. Lucky to be sold to someone who might not kill me immediately." She looked up at him, and for the first time he saw the full depth of her pain. "But you're different. You looked at me and saw something else." "I saw someone who was stronger than the people trying to break her," Thane said simply. "I saw someone worth saving." Kira's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. "I don't know how to trust anymore." "You don't have to trust me," Thane replied. "But you can stay, for as long as you want. No chains, no obligations, just stay." She nodded once quickly and turned back to the console. But as she worked, Thane noticed her hands weren't shaking anymore. The salvage yards of Kepler Station stretched endlessly into the void, a graveyard of dreams and broken ambitions. Thane maneuvered the Starfall through the debris field with practiced ease, while Kira monitored the sensors from the co-pilot's seat she'd claimed over the past 2 weeks. "There," she said, pointing to a large piece of twisted metal drifting among the wreckage. "That's part of a Valdrian defense platform. The quantum signature is unmistakable." Thane nodded, adjusting their course. In the weeks since she'd repaired his navigation computer, Kira had slowly begun to emerge from her shell. She'd started joining him for meals, had begun sleeping without the nightmares that used to wake him with her muffled cries, and had even smiled once when he'd told her a particularly bad joke about hyperspace mechanics. But whenever they encountered remnants of her lost world, the shadows returned to her eyes. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can find the parts we need elsewhere." "No," her voice was firm. "These systems died with my people. If we can salvage something useful from them, give them new purpose, it's what they would have wanted." The defense platform had been massive once, a testament to Valdrian engineering prowess. Now it was just twisted metal and broken dreams, but Kira guided them to specific sections with the precision of someone who'd helped build it. "The quantum cores should be in the central hub," she said, suiting up in the EVA gear Thane had bought for her. "If they're intact, they're worth more than this ship." "Credits aren't everything," Thane replied, checking her seals. "You sure? You want to go over there?" "I need to," she said. And he understood. Some ghosts could only be faced head-on. The platform's interior was a maze of collapsed corridors and shattered bulkheads. Kira moved through it with eerie familiarity, her helmet light cutting through the darkness as she navigated by memory. Thane followed, watching her back and marveling at her courage. "I helped design this section," she said over the comm, her voice echoing in the empty halls. "I was so proud of the defensive grid integration. We thought it would protect us from anything." "You couldn't have known what was coming," Thane replied. "Wars change. Technology advances. Sometimes the best defenses aren't enough." They found the quantum cores in a chamber that had been partially crushed by the platform's death throes. 3 of the 5 cores were intact, their crystalline structures still pulsing with faint energy. Kira ran her gloved hands over them reverently. "They're still active," she whispered. After all this time, they're still trying to protect something. Like you, Thane said softly. She looked at him through her helmet's faceplate and he saw tears floating in the zero gravity. I wasn't strong enough to save them. I hid in the maintenance shafts while my world burned. What kind of protector does that make me? A living one, Thane replied firmly. Kira, I've seen a lot of dead heroes. They're very noble and very useless. You survived because you were meant to, because the galaxy still needs what you can give it. What I can give it? She laughed bitterly. I'm a broken engineer from a dead world. What could I possibly— You gave me back my ship, Thane interrupted. You gave me hope that there are still good things worth fighting for. You gave me— He paused, realizing he was about to say something that might change everything between them. You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. What? The feeling that I'm not alone in this darkness? They stared at each other across the chamber, surrounded by the remains of her people's greatest achievement. The silence stretched between them, filled with the whisper of recycled air and the distant hum of the Starfall's engines. Thane, she said finally, what happened to you? Before the auction, before you found me? What made you understand what it was like to be thrown away? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain. I was a decorated officer in the Imperial Navy. 23 years of service, countless battles, medals I didn't want for things I wish I'd never had to do. I believed in the cause, in the idea that we were bringing order to chaos. He picked up one of the quantum cores, its crystal surface reflecting the harsh light of his helmet lamp. Then I discovered what was really happening on Meridian Colony. The civilian massacres, the biological weapons, the cover-ups. I tried to report it through proper channels. They buried it, Kira guessed. They buried it, and they buried me with it. Court-martialed on trumped-up charges, stripped of rank, discharged without honors. 23 years of service, and they threw me away like garbage because I wouldn't look the other way. His laugh was bitter. The worst part was that I still believed in the system right up until the moment they destroyed me. How long ago? 5 years. I've been drifting ever since, taking odd jobs, trying to figure out who I am without the uniform. He looked at her directly. Until I saw you on that platform, I thought I was just another piece of space debris. But watching you fight, to rebuild yourself, to find purpose again, it reminded me that broken doesn't mean worthless. Kira reached out and touched his gloved hand. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The disgraced officer and the last engineer of a dead world. Maybe that's what makes us perfect for each other, Thane said, and immediately felt heat rise in his cheeks. I mean, as a team, partners, working together. But Kira didn't pull her hand away. Instead, she stepped closer, and even through the bulky EVA suits, he could feel the warmth of her presence. Thane, she said softly, when we get back to the ship, I want to show you something. The real reason I survived when everyone else died. What? The next phase. The thing my people were building when the war came. It's not just about salvaging the past anymore. Her voice grew stronger, more determined. It's about creating something new, something that could help people like us, the discarded, the forgotten, the ones everyone else gave up on. What do you need? A partner, she said, simply. Someone who understands that the most beautiful things can rise from the ashes of the worst disasters. Someone who knows that just because the galaxy threw us away doesn't mean we stop fighting. Thane felt something shift inside his chest, a warmth he'd thought was gone forever. You've got him. They gathered the quantum cores in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not the emptiness of isolation, but the companionable silence of two people who'd found something worth holding on to in the darkness. The Starfall hummed with new purpose as Kira worked in the converted cargo bay, her salvaged quantum cores providing the foundation for something unprecedented. Thane watched from the doorway, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands as he observed the graceful precision of her movements. The quantum matrix is stable, she said without looking up, her voice carrying the excitement of discovery. The resonance frequency is holding at exactly the parameters we need. I have no idea what that means, Thane admitted, but you sound happy about it. She glanced over her shoulder, and he was struck again by how much she'd changed since the K auction. The fear was still there, probably always would be, but it was layered now with confidence and purpose. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and she wore the fitted jumpsuit he'd bought her with unconscious elegance. It means we can do more than just survive, she said, turning back to the device. We can make a difference. The past month had been a revelation. Kira's project, a quantum communication array that could reach across impossible distances, was unlike anything Thane had ever seen. She'd explained the theory, how her people had been developing the technology to connect their scattered colonies to create a network that could share knowledge and resources across the galaxy. The final calibration should be complete within the hour, she continued, her hands dancing over the crystalline interfaces. After that, we can begin testing the long-range capabilities. And then we find others like us. The forgotten, ones the discarded, the people who slip through the cracks. We give them a voice, a way to connect, to help each other. She paused, her expression growing soft. We build something beautiful from the pieces of our broken worlds. Thane sat down, his coffee, and moved closer, drawn by the passion in her voice. You realize this could change everything. The political implications alone, I know. She looked up at him and he saw the depth of her commitment. That's why I need someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who won't use this technology for the wrong reasons. Kira, he reached out, almost touching her face before catching himself. What if I let you down? What if I'm not strong enough to be what you need? You've already been what I needed, she replied softly. You saw me when I was invisible. You gave me hope when I had none. You believed in me when I'd forgotten how to believe in myself. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Thane was acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the way her dark eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies in their depths. The quantum resonance is fluctuating, Kira said suddenly, turning back to the device. I need to adjust the harmonic frequencies before. Alarms began shrieking through the ship. Proximity alert, the AI announced. 3 vessels approaching on intercept vectors. Configuration suggests hostile intent. Thane was already moving, his military training overriding everything else. Pirates. They must have been monitoring our salvage runs. He grabbed Kira's hand. Bridge now. The attacking ships were Marauder-class raiders, fast and deadly. On the tactical display, Thane could see them moving to surround the starfall, cutting off escape routes with practiced efficiency. This is Captain Voss of the Crimson Tide. A harsh voice crackled over the comm. Surrender your salvage and prepare to be boarded. Resist and we'll space you. Not happening, Thane muttered, his hands flying over the controls. The starfall might be old, but she had a few tricks left. Kira, can you reroute power from the quantum array to the engines? Already on it. Her fingers danced across her console, and Thane felt the ship's power signature shift. But Thane, the array isn't stable yet. If we push the engines too hard, we'll deal with that if we survive the next 10 minutes. He threw the ship into a spiraling dive that would have made his old squadron proud. Hold on. The next few minutes were a blur of desperate maneuvers and weapon fire. The pirates were good, but Thane had been fighting in space when their captain was still learning to walk. He used every trick he knew, every advantage the Starfall's modifications could give him. But it wasn't enough. Port engine is failing, Kira reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. We're losing power to the defensive systems. One of the raiders had gotten a lucky shot through their defenses, and now they were limping, prey waiting for the predators to close in. Thane could see the lead ship moving in for the kill, its weapons charging for a final strike. Thane, Kira said quietly, I can overload the quantum array. The energy discharge might be enough to disable their ships. What would that do to you? He asked, though he already knew the answer from her expression. The quantum feedback would be significant. I might not survive it. No. His voice was flat, final. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. Not for me. Not for anyone. But the array, all the work, the people we could help, will mean nothing if you're not here to see it. He turned in his chair to face her fully. Kira, I need you to understand something. You're not just my partner in this project. You're not just someone I care about. He took a deep breath. I love you. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the chaos around them seemed to fade. I love you, he repeated, and I'm not losing you. Not to pirates, not to noble sacrifice, not to anything, so we're going to find another way. Thane, she whispered. No arguments. We're a team, remember? We solve this together. He turned back to his controls, his mind racing. The quantum array. Can you create a localized field instead of an overload? Localized how? Around their engines. Disrupt their power systems without the massive discharge. Her hands flew over her console, her brilliant mind already working through the possibilities. It's possible, but I'd need to manually target each ship, and you'd need to get us close enough for precision work. Leave that to me. Thane's smile was predatory. I've got a few moves these pirates have never seen. What followed was a dance of technology and skill that neither of them could have accomplished alone. Thane pushed the Starfall through maneuvers that should have torn her apart, while Kira worked miracles with the quantum array, precisely targeting the Raiders' engines with surgical strikes of disrupted space-time. One by one, the pirate ships found themselves dead in space, their crews cursing over the comm as their systems failed in ways they couldn't begin to understand. This is impossible, Captain Voss snarled. What kind of weapon? The kind you'll never understand, Thane replied, cutting the connection. In the sudden quiet that followed, Thane and Kira stared at each other across the bridge. The danger was past, but the words spoken in its heart still hung between them. You meant it, Kira said finally. What you said about loving me. Every word. Thane stood slowly, his heart hammering. I know it's complicated, I know you've been through hell, and I don't want to pressure you. But yes, I meant it. She rose from her chair, closing the distance between them with deliberate steps. When she was close enough to touch, she reached up and placed her hands on either side of his face. I love you too, she whispered. I've been afraid to say it, afraid to feel it. But I do. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, years of loneliness and pain melting away in the warmth of connection. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Kira, Thane murmured against her forehead. Are you sure? I don't want you to think you owe me anything because I bought your freedom. I don't owe you anything, she replied firmly. But I choose to give you everything. This time, when their lips met, there was nothing tentative about it. The kiss deepened, became hungry, desperate, as if they were trying to pour all their unspoken feelings into that single moment of contact. Later, in the privacy of Thane's quarters, they explored each other with the reverence of people who had found something precious in the darkness. Kira's skin was silk beneath his hands, and she gasped his name like a prayer, as he worshipped every inch of her with lips and tongue and gentle fingers. I never thought I could feel this again, she whispered as he held her afterward, her head pillowed on his chest. After everything I lost, I thought I was broken beyond repair. You're not broken, Thane murmured into her hair. You're beautiful. You're strong. You're perfect. We're perfect, she corrected, tracing patterns on his chest. Together. Outside, their window, the stars wheeled in their ancient dance, but inside the starfall, two lost souls had finally found their way home. The message came through on the quantum array 3 months later, crackling with the distinctive harmonics of Valdrian technology. Kira's hands trembled as she fine-tuned the frequency, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. This is Engineer Dex Caney calling on the old frequencies. Is anyone out there? Anyone at all? Thane appeared at her shoulder, having rushed from the engine room where he'd been installing new stabilizers. That's impossible. I thought you were the only survivor. So did I. Kira's voice was barely a whisper as she opened the channel. Dex, this is Kira Thorne. I'm here. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then a sob of relief echoed through the ship's speakers. Kira! Oh, blessed void, you're alive! We hoped, but we weren't sure. There are others, Kira. Not many, but others. The reunion took place on Sanctuary Station, a decommissioned mining platform that had become home to refugees from a dozen different conflicts. Thane watched from the docking bay as Kira embraced the small group of Valdrian survivors, 6 individuals who had somehow escaped the destruction of their world through various strokes of luck and circumstance. This is Thane Reeves, Kira said, her arm linked through his as she made introductions. My partner. There was a weight to the word that made Thane's heart skip. They'd been partners in every sense for months now, but hearing her claim him so publicly still filled him with warmth. You're the one who saved her, said Dex, a tall Valdrian with silver hair and knowing eyes. She's told us the story. How? You saw what others missed. I saw what was always there, Thane replied. I just had the sense to recognize it. As the reunions continued, more details emerged. The survivors had been scattered across the galaxy, working in obscurity, hiding their identities, trying to forget their past. But Kira's quantum communication array had given them something unprecedented, a way to find each other, to connect, to remember who they were. The network is growing, Kira explained to Thane later as they walked through Sanctuary Station's gardens, a small oasis of green in the metal corridors. It's not just Valdrians anymore. We've made contact with survivors from dozens of lost worlds, refugees from forgotten conflicts, people who've been written off by the galaxy's major powers. Your people would be proud, Thane said, squeezing her hand. You're giving them exactly what they would have wanted. Connection, hope, community. We're giving them that, Kira corrected. This wouldn't have been possible without you. Your ship, your contacts, your willingness to risk everything for people you'd never met. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Thane, there's something I need to tell you. The seriousness in her voice made his stomach clench. What is it? The network is expanding faster than we anticipated. We're going to need a larger ship, a permanent base of operations, a proper organization. She took a deep breath. I've been offered a position heading up the refugee communication project. It would mean traveling constantly, setting up new nodes, helping people across the galaxy. Thane felt his world shift. That's wonderful. It's everything you've worked for. I can't do it without you, she said quickly. I won't do it without you. If you're willing, I want you to be my co-director. We'd be equal partners in everything. The project, the organization, the future we're building. Kira. He cupped her face in his hands, marveling at how much she'd changed from the broken girl on the auction platform. Are you sure? This is your dream, your people's legacy. I don't want to get in the way of that. You're not in the way, she said firmly. You're the reason it's possible. You're the reason I'm possible. She smiled, and it was like watching a star being born. Besides, I seem to remember a conversation about building something beautiful from the pieces of our broken worlds. That's exactly what we're doing. The formal ceremony took place a week later in Sanctuary Station's central hub, with representatives from a dozen different species in attendance. The organization they were founding didn't have an official name yet. They were calling it simply the Network. But its mission was clear: to connect the forgotten, to give voice to the voiceless, to ensure that no one would ever again face the darkness alone. 6 months ago, Thane said in his speech, I thought I was just another piece of space debris drifting through the void without purpose. But sometimes, the galaxy has a way of bringing together the people who need each other most. He looked at Kira, radiant in the simple white dress she'd chosen for the occasion. Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones others throw away. Later, in the privacy of their new quarters aboard the Starfall, now officially designated as the network's mobile command center, they made love with a passion born of shared purpose and infinite possibility. Kira moved above him like a goddess, her blue-gray skin luminous in the starlight streaming through their viewport. I love you, she gasped as she moved, her hands braced against his chest. I love you. I love you, I love you. Forever, Thane promised, pulling her down for a kiss that tasted like starfire and dreams. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Afterward, they lay entwined, watching the stars wheel past their window. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but it was also full of wonders and second chances. Somewhere out there, other lost souls were finding their way home, guided by the network of light that Kira had built from the ashes of her world. What are you thinking about? Thane asked, running his fingers through her hair. The future, she replied, her voice soft with contentment. All the people we're going to help, all the connections we're going to make. The families we're going to reunite, the communities we're going to rebuild. She turned in his arms to look at him. The children we might have someday, who'll grow up knowing that they're part of something bigger than themselves. Children? Thane's heart skipped at the possibility. You want to have children? With me? I want to have everything with you, Kira said simply. I want to build a life and a legacy and a future that honors both our peoples. I want to show the galaxy that love can triumph over loss, that hope can rise from despair, that the most beautiful things often come from the most broken places. She was right, Thane realized. What they'd built together, their love, their partnership, their shared mission, was proof that the galaxy's discards could become its greatest treasures. From the auction block where they'd first met to the stars they now called home, they had created something that would outlive them both. The network would grow, would spread across the galaxy, would touch lives they'd never know. But at its heart would always be this moment, this choice, this love that had begun when a broken officer looked at a forgotten girl and saw not worthless cargo, but infinite possibility. I love you, Kira Thorne, Thane whispered into the darkness between stars. I love you too, Thane Reeves, she whispered back. Now and always. And in the vast expanse of space, two hearts beat as one, their love a beacon of hope in the endless night.